If you were born before 1960, I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now and stay with me for the next 10 minutes, because there is a very real chance that the Social Security check landing in your account every single month is smaller than what you are actually owed. And I am not talking about pocket change. I am talking about hundreds of dollars every month, thousands of dollars every year. Money that you worked for. Money you paid into the system for decades, just sitting there, miscalculated, overlooked, and quietly disappearing because of errors hidden inside your Social Security record that nobody from the government is going to call you about. Millions of retirees never realize their Social Security record may contain errors, omissions, or overlooked details that directly affect the amount they receive every single month. The SSA sends you a number. You trust the number. And the money you were supposed to receive just vanishes without a single letter of explanation. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly what is hiding inside that record, how to find it, and the specific steps you take to fix it. Before another month goes by, stay until the very end, because the last thing I cover is something almost nobody checks, and it could mean a significant amount of money you have been leaving on the table without even knowing it. If you are not subscribed yet, do that right now and turn on the bell. Social Security rules, benefit calculations, and correction procedures change every single year. And when they change, nobody from Washington picks up the phone to explain what it means for your specific situation. That is exactly what this channel does. So subscribe ho, and let's get into it. Before I get into the details, let me tell you about something that happened recently that I think about a lot. There was a retired nurse from outside of Phoenix named Carol. She had been collecting Social Security for about 7 years. Every month, $1,380 showed up in her account. She never questioned it. She figured the government runs these numbers through computers. They know what they are doing. They would tell her if something was wrong. Then her son, who works in finance, sat down with her one afternoon and pulled up her Social Security earnings statement online. Found it in under 5 minutes. 2 full years from the mid-1980s, years when Carol was working double shifts at a hospital, were showing up as $0 earned. Like she had not worked at all. She had her old W-2s in a box in her closet. They made copies, filed a correction, and submitted everything to the SSA. About 8 weeks later, the SSA confirmed the mistake. Carol's monthly benefit went up by over $90, and she received a lump sum payment going all the way back to when she originally filed. 7 years of a smaller check than she deserved. Not because she did anything wrong. Not because she filed late. Because 2 years of her work history were simply missing from her record. And nobody told her to look. Carol's story is not unusual. It is far more common than most people realize. And the reason it keeps happening is the same every single time. Nobody told them to check. So today, that is exactly what I am going to help you do. Point 1. Missing earnings on your record. Let's start with the most important thing. The one issue that affects more retirees than anything else I am going to talk about today. Missing earnings on your Social Security record. Here is how your benefit actually gets calculated, so this makes sense. The Social Security Administration takes your highest 35 years of earnings from your entire working life. They adjust those numbers for inflation, average them out, and run them through a formula to come up with what is called your primary insurance amount. That is the number your monthly check is based on. Now here is where the problem starts. Every single dollar in that calculation comes from earnings records that were reported by your employers, sometimes going all the way back to the 1960s and 1970s. Paper records. Manual entries. Decades of data handled by humans who make mistakes. If your employer reported your income incorrectly, or if there was a processing error at the SSA, an entire year of your earnings could simply be missing from your record right now. And if that year is missing, your benefit was calculated as if you never worked that year at all. If earnings from even 1 year are missing, your benefit calculation could be permanently lower than it should be. Not temporarily. Permanently. For every single month for the rest of your life. The SSA themselves have acknowledged making billions of dollars in underpayments, and according to research on earnings record errors, nearly half of all mismatches in the system are never corrected because the people affected never knew to look. This is the #1 thing hiding inside your Social Security record right now, and the only way to find it is to go look. Point 2. Low earning or zero earning years. Now let me add a second layer to this because it is just as important, and almost nobody understands it. Even if your earnings were reported correctly, every single year, no missing data, you could still be losing money because of something called low earning or zero earning years sitting inside your 35-year calculation. Here is what I mean. The SSA uses your highest 35 years of earnings to calculate your benefit. That means if you worked for 40 years, they drop the 5 lowest years and use the best 35. That part actually helps you. But here is the part that hurts you. If you worked for less than 35 years, maybe you took time off to raise children, maybe you had a period of illness, maybe you changed careers and had a few lean years early on, the SSA does not just use the years you worked. They fill in the remaining spots with zeros. So if you only worked 30 years, 5 of those 35 slots in your calculation are zeros, and zeros drag down your average, which drags down your benefit. Every single month. Now here is what most people do not know. One forgotten low-income year could still be affecting your benefit calculation right now. Because even if you worked all 35 years, if some of those years had very low reported income, maybe you had a part-time job, maybe income was misreported, those low numbers are sitting in your calculation pulling your average down. When you log into your Social Security account and look at your earnings history, you are looking for 2 things: years that are completely missing, and years where the income reported looks far lower than what you actually remember earning. Both of those are money you are leaving behind every single month. Point 3. Overlooked spousal and survivor benefits. Now, I want to talk about something that I think is one of the most overlooked sources of unclaimed Social Security money for people born before 1960. Spousal and survivor benefits. And before you tune this out thinking it does not apply to you, stay with me. Because this is where some of the biggest mistakes happen and some of the biggest recoveries are possible. If you are married or if you are widowed, there may be additional Social Security money you are entitled to that you are simply not receiving right now. Let me explain how this works. If you are currently married, you may be eligible to receive up to 50% of your spouse's Social Security benefit if that amount is higher than what your own record gives you. This is called the spousal benefit. A lot of people know it exists, but what they do not know is that they have to actually claim it. It does not happen automatically. If you never asked about it, there is a real chance you are collecting only your own benefit when you could be collecting more. Now, for those of you who have lost a spouse, this is the part I really need you to hear. As a surviving spouse, you may be entitled to up to 100% of what your late husband or wife was receiving or was entitled to receive. That is called the survivor benefit. And the rules around it are complicated enough that errors happen constantly. In fact, a report from a government oversight office confirmed that thousands of widows and widowers had been underpaid because of a calculation error in a process called the Widows Indexing Computation. The SSA acknowledged the problem. These people filed correctly. They waited the right amount of time. The math inside the SSA's own system was simply applied wrong. The Inspector General estimated that roughly 40% of surviving spouses reviewed during that period may have been affected by similar errors. 40%. That is not a small rounding mistake. That is a systemic problem that the government quietly acknowledges when pressed, but does not go out of its way to announce to the people it affected. If you are a widow or widower, and you have never sat down to specifically verify that your survivor benefit was calculated correctly, that needs to happen. Today. Not next month. Point 4. Incorrect personal information. This next one might sound simple, but do not underestimate it because it causes more problems than people realize. Incorrect personal information on your Social Security record. Think about how long ago some of your early work history was recorded. We are talking about the 1960s, the 1970s, paper forms, manual data entry, names misspelled, Social Security numbers transposed by one digit, date of birth recorded incorrectly. Any one of those errors, as small as they sound, can cause your earnings to be filed under a slightly different record, which means when the SSA goes to calculate your benefit, some of those earnings are simply not attached to you. It also affects things like your Medicare enrollment timing, your full retirement age determination, and your eligibility for certain benefits that are tied directly to your date of birth. This is not the most exciting thing I am going to tell you today, but it supports everything else we are talking about. Because if your name, your Social Security number, or your date of birth has even a small error somewhere in that record, it can quietly affect your benefit in ways that are completely invisible to you. When you log into your My Social Security account, one of the first things you want to do, before you even look at earnings, is confirm that your basic personal information is listed correctly. Name exactly as it should be. Date of birth correct. Social Security number matching your card. Small errors, real consequences, easy to check. Point 5. Delayed retirement credits. All right, I want to close with something that functions as a bonus check for those of you who delayed filing past your full retirement age. This is called delayed retirement credits. Here is how it works. If you were born before 1960, your full retirement age is somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on your exact birth year. If you waited past that age to start collecting, for every single year you waited, the SSA was supposed to add an 8% increase to your benefit, all the way up until age 70. So if you waited 4 full years past your full retirement age, your benefit should reflect a 32% increase above your base amount. That is significant money. And here is the problem. Errors in delayed retirement credit calculations do happen. They are less common than missing earnings records, but they are real. And if your benefit was supposed to reflect 2, 3, or 4 years of delayed credits, and it does not, you are leaving a very real amount of money unclaimed every single month. When you log into your My Social Security account, you can see a breakdown of how your benefit was calculated. If the delayed retirement credits are not showing up the way you expected, or if the math simply does not match what you were told when you filed, that is worth a phone call to the SSA immediately. What to do right now? Okay, this is the part you should be writing down. Step 1. Go to ssa.gov and create or log into your My Social Security account. If you have never done it, it takes about 10 minutes. Once you are in, go straight to your earnings history. This is a year-by-year record of every dollar ever reported to Social Security under your name and your Social Security number. Go through that record carefully. You are looking for any year that shows $0 when you know you were working. Any year where the income looks far lower than what you were actually earning. Any gap in your working timeline that does not make sense. If you find one, you have found money that was quietly removed from your benefit calculation without your knowledge. Step 2. Gather your documentation. Old tax returns, W-2 forms, Pay stubs, anything that shows what you actually earned in the years that look wrong. You do not need records going back 40 years. Start with what you have. Even a few years of documentation is enough to open a correction. Step 3. File Form ssa.gov. That is the official request for correction of earnings record, and it is available directly on the SSA website. Fill it out, attach your documentation, and submit it. You can also call the SSA directly at 1-800-772-1213 and ask them to open an earnings record review. Or you can walk into your local Social Security office in person and bring your paperwork with you. Once you submit, the SSA has a process to match your documentation against their records and credit any earnings that were missing. The correction timeline is typically somewhere between 10 and 90 days. If money is owed to you, they calculate the back pay and issue it as a lump sum direct deposit. Timing, urgency. Now here is something about timing I do not want you to miss. While the SSA does have some flexibility to correct errors regardless of when they happened, there is a general guideline that earnings are most easily corrected within 3 years, 3 months, and 15 days from the end of the tax year in which those wages were paid. What that means in plain English is this: the older the error, the harder it is to fix, and the more documentation you are going to need to prove it. This is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to move on this now, rather than 3 years from now. Because if Carol from Phoenix had waited another 5 years to dig out those W-2s, those missing years from the 1980s might have been impossible to recover. Here is what I want you to take away from this video. The Social Security Administration is not your enemy. Most of the people who work there are genuinely trying to do their jobs. But the system is enormous. It is complicated. It was built on decades of paper records and manual entries. And the honest truth is that it makes mistakes. Mistakes that cost real people real money every single month. The burden of catching those mistakes does not fall on the SSA. It falls on you. And the only way you catch them is by looking. If you were born before 1960, your benefit is supposed to be based on your 35 highest earning years. Correctly recorded, correctly indexed, correctly calculated. Before you close this video, go to ssa.gov, log into your My Social Security account, and look at your earnings history. All of it. Every year going back to the beginning. Check for missing earnings. Check for low or zero income years that do not look right. If you are widowed, verify your survivor benefit was calculated correctly. Confirm your personal information is accurate. And if you delayed filing, make sure those delayed retirement credits are actually showing up in your benefit amount. If something does not look right, it probably is not. The form to fix it is SSA 7008, and the number to call is 1-800-772-1213. And do me a favor. Send this video to one person you care about who was born before 1960 and is collecting Social Security right now. One share takes 10 seconds. If their earnings record has even one missing year, finding it could mean hundreds of dollars more every single month, permanently, for the rest of their life. Money the SSA has been calculating wrong without sending a single letter to tell them about it. That is what this channel is here for.